Trucker Dump, episode 172. In today's show, we'll be talking about averting a major railroad strike, absentee voter info by state, trucker blitz results and automatic emergency braking testing, a Pony Express style trucking startup, new healthy eating options, truckers and overtime, some really weird recalls, and much, much more. As for listener feedback, Trailrider shares his thoughts on drivers not having any rules, while Shy Guy gives me an opportunity to recommend some of the podcasts I'm currently listening to. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or give them a call at 205-397-0934. Guitar!
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by abouttruckdriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers. I hope you enjoyed the week off from the podcast. I know I didn't. Well, wasn't because of the podcast. I was doing some training last week, but we will get into that in just a minute. First, I would like to tell you who the heck I am in case you're new to the show. And I guess I should apologize to all the regular listeners who have to listen to me blather on about myself for just a couple of minutes at the beginning of every episode. But hey, you never know who's new and they're listening and they want to know who the dork behind the microphone is. Well, that dork, his name is Todd McCann. He's been a trucker for 25 years. He's been LTL for the last 3 years and over the road the rest of the time. Much of it, well, about half that was with my wife and ex-co-driver, who I lovingly call the evil overlord because it's true. And what else? Well, I am the author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. And Trucking Life actually includes a 9.25-hour audiobook included with it. All you do is buy the ebook, and there's a link right in there, and you can download that and listen if that's how you'd like to check out that book. You can find both of those at abouttruckdriving.com, or you can just find each of those books individually at Amazon, iBooks, wherever you get your ebooks. So, enough about that. Let's get back to why I missed last week. I had to train. Well, it's not really training. What we call it is mentoring. And this involves when a new driver comes into the company and they have experience driving. They just need to get acclimated to the company, how our paperwork works, all the rules. And of course, I am a Teamster, so we've got all the union stuff to deal with. I got to teach them all about that stuff. And I get them for about a week and I just ride along. They do most of the driving until they get tired, because every driver gets tired when they first start driving line haul LTL, because you're driving all night long. But basically, for the most part, I'm sitting over there just blabbing, which, as you can imagine, suits me. But honestly, by the first night, I was pretty hoarse. Now, I did tell everybody in the Trucker Dump Facebook group and the Trucker Dump Slack group that the episode was going to be missed last week, but for those of you who are not a part of that group, sorry. I did not know about this in advance. It kind of came on me suddenly, and I just had to go with it. Anyway, I said that the training period was bad. It wasn't really bad. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. The guy I was training was a very experienced driver. He had been driving 2 years longer than me. He was a better driver than me. I'll just come right out and say that. He was also very intelligent. He caught on to everything I said very quick. He was friendly, easy to get along with, listened well. Like I said, just retained all that information pretty well and asked lots of good questions, which I love. So it was a pretty good experience overall. And then I left him on Sunday when we got home early Sunday morning, and I thought everything was fine. And then I find out Monday he quit. So I don't know. Is it the training? As my co-drivers like to point out, well, Todd, you're batting 1,000. Yes, it is true that everyone I have trained so far or mentored is gone. But, well, that's not true. I mentored one gentleman and he was lied to by recruiting. Surprise, surprise. And he just had to switch to day shift. But as for now, he is still there, although he is looking at another company right now. So maybe I'll be batting 1,000. Yay, go me. Oh, how pathetic. No, seriously, my terminal manager said, don't worry about this. It happens all the time. And so don't take it too personal. Well, I don't. I think I do a pretty good job at training. My co-drivers, my co-workers all think that I do a pretty good job, and that's why they think I should do it. Well, they say that's why they think I should do it, because I'd be a really great trainer. What they really mean is that they just don't want to do it, and I'm the only one who's stupid enough to do it. But you know what? I have stood my ground, because we now have students coming into this company. And that is a whole new ballgame. I didn't sign up for that. I thought if we were going to be training a rookie out of the box, brand new, and we were going to be training them and spending all that extra time with them, up to 4 weeks, sometimes longer with them, that I would be paid extra for that. And I am not. And that is amazing to me. I have taken steps to try to get that rectified, and it has not been rectified. And so I just said, not doing it anymore until I get paid. And maybe I won't ever get paid for that, and that is just fine and dandy. If they want to ship a newbie off to another terminal and let them train them because they're suckers and will train for free, have at it. The standard in this industry is pay a trainer for training. And I do it the right way. I sit in the passenger seat the whole time and I coach them. I'm not over there asleep like so many trainers. I'm not abusing them for extra miles. We just run a typical 11 hours or 14-hour day. And hey, we'll quit a little early if they are super tired. I will take over long enough for them to, get a little nap or whatever and keep driving. But we do not abuse the clock just so I can get some more miles. But anyway, at this point, I'm rambling, right? Well, you'd think I'd be all talked out after last week, but I guess not. I didn't do a podcast, so I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew. And that's actually a true statement today. I don't normally drink Mountain Dew, but I needed a little extra boost today at the end of my shift. And, well, the normal options just didn't appeal to me. So I looked in there and saw Mountain Dew, something called something melon, magic melon or something, I don't know, weird, Mountain Dew in their names. And I drank it and it was very melony. And well, I probably won't get it again, but I am all jacked up, as you can tell. Now, keep in mind, the rest of this podcast is recorded throughout the week, so I won't sound so jacked up here in just a few seconds. So with that, let's say we get started with the news. Well, I'm going to throw you a twist today by not starting the episode with a recall. Well, not a truck recall anyway. How about a recall for CPAP machines? Found this one on CDLLife.com. 17 million CPAP masks recalled for serious safety issue involving magnets. Now, this isn't just CPAP machines. Apparently, it's also a BiPAP machine, which I'd never heard of. A bi-level positive airway pressure. I don't know what the difference in that is, but, hey, if you've got one of those, be aware. This is for a bunch of Philips Respironics CPAP or bi-level BiPAP, I guess, machines. Anyway, they're saying that these magnets in these devices can affect you or can even cause personal injury or injury to others around you. I guess probably because you might wake up freaking out for whatever this causes and, slap the person next to you. I don't know. Anyway, they say there's been 14 serious injuries and 0 deaths so far, but they are warning people that these magnets can affect metals in other parts of your body. Obviously, they're thinking about stuff like pacemakers. There's, defibrillators that are put inside your body, that'll restart your heart in certain situations. There's metal stents for, if you've had heart attacks or, to open up arteries, things like that. Boy, there's a whole list on this. So you ought to go and check this out if you're using one of these CPAP machines. And if you've got any metal in your body whatsoever, they even talking about how it can affect shrapnel in your body if you've got some of that from a war or something like that. Or just a really bad shop accident, I guess. But yeah, there's gastrointestinal clips, there's insulin pumps that have metal in them, all kinds of different things. Eye implants, who knew? Even certain contact lenses have metal in them. Didn't know that either. So anyway, make sure you check this article out if you are using a CPAP machine, especially if that device is a Philips. And you can, and there's also a number here, a phone number and a website, usa.philips.com, that you can go to and check out exactly if, how your device is, how they're going to handle the recall on that, I should say. So that about does it for that recall, but of course you're not going to escape truck recalls, are you? Let's start out with, well, hopefully this is the only one today. Western Star trucks recalled for hood issue. Found this one on landline.media. This one affects about 4,000 Western Stars. This is models years 2020 through 2023, the 47X and the 49X. And apparently the hood bezel cover may detach, which could cause a road hazard and increase the risk of a crash. They're saying about only 1% of the more than 4,000 Western Star trucks will be affected by this. So even if you have a Western Star, you probably aren't going to be affected by this, but it couldn't hurt to call and check it out. All the phone numbers and the recall numbers are available right here on landline.media. Check it out. Well, I guess we should mention right away the big news that's been everywhere, even in the mainstream news, and that is the rail workers strike and how, well, at the time of this, let's see, this is Thursday, they have reached a tentative agreement to not strike. They were expected to go on strike Friday. That would be September 16th at 12:01 a.m., but it looks like that has been averted for now. Now, the title of this article here on freightwaves.com is "We Haven't Completely Dodged a Disastrous Rail Strike, Rail Workers Say." Again, if you haven't seen this in the mainstream news, I would be shocked. But basically, the couple of the big rail unions were holding out for, didn't seem like a lot. They were just asking for a little bit of paid sick leave, which they hadn't been getting. And that just seemed to be the worst of it. And it just seemed really weird that they're so hung up on this. I can't imagine, I work for the Teamsters. We have 5 days sick leave, at least at my company, and it is paid sick leave. So I am a little surprised at this. One worker here in the article quotes, that he gets 2 weeks of vacation and he burns about a week of that just, because his kids are sick, things like that. Pretty sad. But apparently what happened here is the White House stepped in, and I guess there's precedent for this. I was a little surprised at this, but I guess there's precedent for this in the past. Big strikes sometimes that would affect the entire country. The White House will step in, or Congress will try to negotiate some deal, get in the middle of it, and Congress can even stop a big strike like this from happening. I did not know that. A coworker of mine told me about that recently, and I was like, really? I didn't know that. So I looked it up, and sure as crap, Congress can stop that. And I guess they can do that for a truckers too. Like if you could ever get truckers to all unite together and try to strike across the nation all at once, which will never happen because we can't get truckers, even a small group of truckers, to agree on anything. But if it ever did happen or was threatened to happen, the government could step in and Congress could put a stop to that. So good thing that's probably never going to happen, and we'll never have to worry about them stepping in. But anyway, this deal was apparently, that's air quotes, deal, negotiated deal, has not been reached. It was just basically a way to postpone this strike that was going to happen. According to all reports, 78% of the union declined on the last contract, and they don't really think that adding 1 day, that's all they did with this agreement, was just add 1 day of sick leave. Paid sick leave, I should say. These union members are just saying that ain't going to cut it. But for now, they figure if they didn't do this, it sounds like to me what they're saying is if we didn't go along with this and go and agree to not strike, that the Congress would have stepped in and made us not strike anyway, so we might as well just go along with this deal for now. But they are going to be looking at this again in the future. So disaster has not been averted. Now, all of this really would have been good for the trucking industry. We'd have been picking up freight. I know my company was preparing for this and was expecting to, was clearing the slate so they could handle some of this freight. And that is not happening now. Oh, well, at least not for now. We will see in the future. I'll keep you up to date on this as it goes, or more than likely, all the big networks are going to keep you up to date on this too. Who knows? These big national media companies don't typically like to cover stories unless it's a major problem. So as long as this is in tentative agreement until it comes up again, they probably won't talk about it again. We will see. Anyway, you can check this one out on freightwaves.com. Disaster averted for now. Let's see here. Landline.media has another one of these articles about getting rid of the overtime thing for truckers. The lack of overtime thing for truckers. This one's called Truckers Overtime Bill Introduced in Senate. So this actually has gone to Senate to have them have a look at it. Earlier in the year, the Department of Transportation did recommend that the elimination of this overtime exemption that was from this ancient Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. They recommended getting rid of that, and they would help improve the supply chain and get more drivers into the industry, because drivers are tired of sitting around at shippers and receivers, and they're just sitting around not getting loaded or anything, and they're not being paid for that a lot of times. Sometimes they are, but often they aren't. So basically, this bill would get rid of that and take us out of that act from ancient times and put us into the modern times where truckers would be getting paid for all of their extra time. Overtime, I should say. Whether that's over 40 hours or over 8 hours. Over 8 hours each day is the preferred method, of course. Otherwise, they could just run you ragged for the first 3 or 4 days and then just not give you any overtime and short your hours on the final day. So anyway, we have discussed in the past the overtime and how that would affect the industry. Some say it would be great and it would fix everything. Others say that it would just basically make the carriers change their method, where they just say, hey, okay, well, you got this much per hour before. Now we're lowering that because we know we're going to have to pay you overtime after you hit 40 hours or whatever. So as everything in life, there's people who think this is really going to fix everything and people who do not. Imagine that disagreement in America. Who knew? Landline.media for all the details. All right, let's head on over to cdllife.com for this doozy. You know how we talk about trucker blitzes, and it seems like every other day there's some sort of safety trucker blitz, and we're thinking, wow, this is just out of hand, ridiculous. Well, maybe it's not so ridiculous. Title of this article: over 16,000 commercial motor vehicles and drivers taken out of service during nation's biggest trucker blitz. Wow. Yeah, this one was the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, or the CVSA's International Road Check inspection. This is the one that took place back in May, and this involves U.S., Canada, and Mexico. 72 hours of lots of inspections. Apparently, they did about over 59,000 inspections, and they placed 12,456 commercial motor vehicles out of service and over 3,700 drivers out of service. Ouch. That's like 23% of the trucks that were inspected were put out of service. Wow. So maybe there is a problem. Perhaps we should start maybe doing better pre-trip inspections and post-trip inspections and getting our companies to fix problems. Interesting concept there. So they give combined numbers here for Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., but I'm just going to focus on the U.S. here because, hey, I'm in the U.S. So the top 5 categories for out-of-service violations were brakes, of course, at 24%, tires, then defective service brakes. Well, brake systems and service brakes, that's interesting. Wonder why there's a difference there. But anyway, I figured defective service brakes would be under brake systems. Weird. Anyway, the number 4 is lights, and number 5 is cargo securement. So as suspected, we have that national brake safety check week or whatever they call it. Well, guess why? Because 24% of all of these out of service violations were brakes. Actually, if you combine the defective service brakes in there, that adds up to almost, let's see, I really suck at math, but that's 37%. So you can see brakes are a major problem. And that is often, I think, one of the things that is completely overlooked when people do their pre-trip inspections, because let's face it, truckers often just walk around and thump tires and look at lights, and that's about it. Maybe they look for damage or something like that, but typically they're just thumping tires, and even worse, kicking them. Come on, drivers. I mean, I can actually sometimes, usually tell if a tire's flat if I go over and I hit it with the soft part of my fist. You know, if I just pound on it a few times, I can hear the sound and I can pretty much tell if it's got air in it or not. But really, you need a tire thumper. And if you're just kicking it lightly with your toe, that is not telling you anything. Believe me, I tried it before. I have kicked a tire before and found out later it was flat. Oops. Just can't tell anything from that. You need to hear the pitch of that tire. Thump it with a tire thumper or a hammer, for Pete's sake. And I will also point out that if you're doing a pre-trip inspection and you don't have a flashlight in your hand, you're doing it wrong. Now, I was guilty of this for many, many, many years, but when I came to my current company, we are not exactly known for our quality equipment. So, great pay, but the equipment sometimes lacks. So I started getting a lot better at pre and post-trip inspections. So, have a flashlight in hand, and that is even during the day. I know that sounds crazy to walk around with a flashlight, and you don't need it for the outside parts, but when you get under the trailer, or you are getting under the trailer, right? Well, you don't actually have to get under the trailer, but you should be flashing a flashlight underneath there and looking to see if there are springs broken. Just recently, I went to pick up a trailer. It was already loaded. I looked, and the spring was cracked in half on one of the axles. And so I had to turn that in. They had to swing the load to a different trailer, and it was a big mess. But at least I caught it. And the reason I did that was because I had a flashlight, and I had it shining underneath the trailer. Also, these brakes. Again, you can't tell if something's, if a part is detached, you got a brake shoe hanging, or you just have low brake pads, whatever it is, you can't tell that. During daylight, even a lot of times, if you get under there, you can see it's really dark under there. So that's my advice. Just take a flashlight with you. I got a little tiny one that just fits in the palm of my hand, basically, and it's not that big of a deal. And on a plus side, I've never seen anybody looking at me really weird. Then again, I'm not really looking to see if anybody's watching me while I'm doing a pre-trip inspection. But anyway, all the details on this, you can go check this out. There's lots of numbers in this article, and you'll find that on cdllife.com. With lots of busty women. CDL Life, I don't know why you got to put all these women right in our faces. That's not cool. But we are truckers. It's probably very good advertising for them. So, hey, if you do want to meet a nice-looking Ukrainian woman, then head on over to cdllife.com, because they're everywhere, apparently. Oh, boy. Here's a fun one. Not. Landline.media. Kentucky targets commercial motor vehicles with driver-focused cameras. Yeah. Okay. Again, this is happening in Kentucky. This is in Laurel County. I did not know where that was, so I had to look it up. It's on I-75. They're saying this first camera location is I-75 northbound way station. That is the one that is between Corbin, Kentucky and London, Kentucky on I-75 again. Apparently, these driver-focused cameras are capable of capturing near real-time, high-resolution images of the vehicle, license plate, US DOT, and KYU numbers, and the inside of the cab. They're then sent to the Kentucky Automated Truck Screening System, who knew that existed, for officers to identify if a vehicle inspection is needed. And apparently, they already have this in operation. They have already issued 137 seatbelt infractions, as well as several infractions for illegal cell phone use. And drivers not wearing corrective lenses Really? This has been going on for about 6 months. Who knew? First I'm hearing of it. Corrective lenses. That's an interesting one. I mean, how would they tell if you're supposed to be wearing glasses? I guess it's just when they pull you over for seatbelt infraction or illegal cell phone use. They look at your license, see you're supposed to be wearing glasses and you don't have glasses on in the photo that they took of you. So I guess that's the way they're getting you. Man, I just love all this invasiveness into the trucker's life. Isn't that great? The state of Kentucky was actually asked if this was specifically for commercial motor vehicles, and they said yes, it was. So, if you got the camera system and everything, why bother using it on innocent car drivers who are probably on their cell phones a lot more than truck drivers are, right? Wow. Oh, well, it is to be expected. Truckers always get singled out in one way or another. Anyway, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet is planning on installing 13 more of these cameras across the state. I'm guessing that means at way stations like this one is, but I am not for sure. That would make the most sense, honestly. So just heads up, you might be a little aware when you're around a way station in Kentucky from here on out. Make sure you are not glancing at a text message or switching podcasts or anything like that when you're going past one of the things. Honestly, if you're ever going to behave in a truck, right around a way station is where you want to do it. But now, it's not just when you're pulling into a way station, but if you're just driving past one that's even closed. Who knew? Well, now you know. So don't blame me if you get a ticket going through Kentucky because you were doing something naughty inside the cab of your truck. Landline.media for this one. Yeesh. Okay. You know how we've talked about in the past about the automatic emergency braking and some of these automated things that are on the new trucks, and they're coming out more and more as standard equipment? Well, here's an article on landline.media that talks about these. Well, it's specifically the automatic braking system. This one's entitled Automatic Braking System Ineffective at Night Spotting Pedestrians, Study Reveals. Now, this is not involving trucks specifically, but it is relevant, I believe, to the trucking industry eventually. So basically, it was the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety that was doing this. They did a bunch of tests for the automatic braking systems at night regarding to pedestrians specifically. Now, if you've ever been driving a truck at night and all of a sudden you see a person on the shoulder of the road walking along, it is always a surprise and always kind of makes you jump a little bit. They are really hard to spot at night, so I'm not surprised that the vehicles they tested sucked. In general, they tested 23 passenger vehicles and only 4 earned a superior rating. More than half received the 2 lowest grades. They're just not good at it. The Toyota Tacoma is one of the ones that did not do very well in that, and that's the vehicle I love. They also listed a whole bunch of other vehicles in here. Actually, the 4 good ones were the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the Nissan Pathfinder, Toyota Camry, and the Toyota Highlander. So, well, the Highlander, I guess the evil overlord, hopefully she won't hit anybody at night. That's a good thing. But anyway, I only mention this because, we've talked about these automated systems in the past and how they often fail. I've talked about having these strange ghost incidents where in the middle of the night, I'll just be cruising along, no rain, no sleet, no snow, no nothing, just dark, and it will just hit the brakes for whatever reason, and you're thinking, what the heck just happened? You didn't see a coyote or anything like that, but it's very annoying, and they really need to get these problems sorted out before they start relying on them, I should say, for the big trucks. And, if they can't get it right in the small cars, with as many as those are on the road that already have these systems installed, how long is it going to be before the trucks are good at it? So anyway, not that you ever would do this, but please just don't rely on all these automated systems. Still, keep your eyes peeled. Because as the driver, you're always the one that's going to get blamed for it, right? So for details on this one, landline.media. No business can be successful without cash flow. And that's never been more apparent than when you go to the diesel pump nowadays. Yowza, ouchie mama. That's why there may never be a better time to check out Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump, or you can call them at 205-397-0934. And of course, there's links in the show notes. So what does Porter Freight Funding do? Well, they've got brokering services, dispatching, fuel cards, insurance, and compliance, to name a few, but their biggest thing is they are a factoring company. And that means when you're having trouble getting money from a customer, Porter Freight Funding is here to bail you out. Once you've set up an account, or you already have an account set up, hopefully, it's a simple 3-step process. Drop off your load, submit your paperwork to Porter Freight Funding, and get paid within 24 hours. And there's no minimums either. You can use Porter Freight Funding for just your problem accounts, or you can use them for all of your collections. So hey, please check out Porter Freight Funding and find out how they can help your business. Again, you can find them at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump, truckerdump's all one word, or give them a call at 205-397-0934. Thanks. And thanks to Porter Freight Funding for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Well, there's not a whole lot to say about this Landline.media article. Cummins signs up Werner for 500 hydrogen internal combustion engines. Yeah, it was a few episodes ago we talked about how Cummins introduced this new hydrogen internal combustion engine, and they were saying it would be a stopgap until they went all electric, that kind of a thing. And apparently Werner is jumping on the bandwagon with that. 500 of them, that's pretty impressive. So again, like I said, there is really not just a whole lot to say about this. I just wanted to let you know that Werner had jumped in on this, and really just point out that this is, well, there's a lot of dissing against the large carriers, right? People think that they're just cookie cutter companies, and, you know, if you're an original OG trucker, you're never going to work for one of them. But they do serve their purposes, you know. The big companies will often hire drivers that other ones wouldn't. Maybe they're more likely to hire a student than an experienced owner operator that's got 5 trucks, and he doesn't want a rookie stepping in his truck and grinding his gears off. So, you know, the larger companies do serve that purpose, but they also serve a purpose for all of these pilot programs, for things like these, you know, hydrogen internal combustion engines, for natural gas engines, for all of these electric vehicles, for all the autonomous stuff that's going on. We need these large companies to step in here, and because they've got the big bucks, you know, and they can, you know, try all this stuff out and see what works and what doesn't. So even if you hate large fleets, they do serve a purpose in the industry. So maybe we should give them a bit of a break, right? Okay. Landline.media for this quick little article. Let's check out overdriveonline.com for this pie in the sky story. Pony Express style freight, startup hopes to shorten long hauls and transform rural America. There is a company called Freight Relay, that's FR8 Relay. They're based out of Arkansas, and they say they hope to take the long out of the long haul trucking part with their series of relay exchange nodes. Apparently, they've won a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture Small Business Innovation Grant of $650,000. Basically, all this money will go towards basically build an app to have a way for truckers to meet across the country so they don't have to go so far from their homes. Now, I've talked about this in the past, that I believe that's probably the way the industry is going in the long term, is they've got to get drivers home more often. Maybe lots of meets and turns. Something out there on the highway going on. Anyway, lots of meets and turns, things like that, where drivers can get home every day. You know, kind of like the way FedEx and UPS runs a lot, where they go out of their home terminal, they take a load halfway, they meet another driver, and they come back. And that's very appealing to a lot of drivers. So the problem is you can do that within your own company. You can arrange things and set things up that way. But how do you do that across carriers? Honestly, this doesn't address that completely. They're basically saying they'd like to set up all of these relay locations where, say you pick up a load in, you know, Dallas, and you're going to Chicago, but you can look on the app and you can see another driver coming from Chicago. He's got a load going back to Dallas, and he will meet you at one of these relay points, and you will swap, and you will go home and he will go home. And that sounds like a neat idea, but the problem is, of course, equipment, especially owner-operators. You just going to swap equipment? I don't know. You're just going to let somebody else take your trailer? That's never going to happen. Even for bigger carriers, like they say that Tyson has expressed interest in this, and other reefer customers have also expressed interest. They didn't name any others, but, well, of course, I guess they would say they had interest in it if they want to get a $650,000 grant, which, by the way, is free money. Yeah, interesting. But anyway, I can't even see like Tyson doing this. Tyson's a reefer company. Say Prime Inc. has reefers. Are they going to allow, a Tyson driver to pull a Prime trailer on the way back and vice versa? Wouldn't your trailer pool be all over the map and you never be able to locate it? I mean, isn't it hard enough to find empty trailers for your company when they tell you to go find an empty trailer? That's already a problem. I don't know. There's a lot to work through here. This may be $650,000 just down the drain, but I do think this is the way of the future. I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe they have relay points with actual docks and they can just pull in there, swing the freight from one to the other. If you've ever unloaded a truck, if you've got 22, 24 pallets and they're just straight pallets on there, you can get that unloaded in 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on how it's loaded. And it's not that big of a deal if you have a forklift and stuff like that. But, well, where's all that money coming from? Anyway, neat idea. We'll see if it ever takes flight. Who knows? Anyway, you can check out this and more details about it on overdriveonline.com. Well, let's chalk this one up to high hopes and expectations. I don't know. Found this on cdllife.com. TA to offer truckers more healthy food options at Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants by the end of 2022. Travel Centers of America is partnering with the Cleveland Clinic to make sure that truck stops are offering, TA's truck stops anyway, are offering healthier food options for truckers. So, for instance, they've got a picture here of an egg white veggie omelet. Looks okay. Probably doesn't taste that great. Now, I'm not going to poo-poo these things. Lots of drivers use an excuse that I'm overweight because I have no healthy options out here. You have healthy options. You really do. We already do. You can go to a truck stop, go to an Iron Skillet or a Country Pride and order a grilled chicken breast or, just a regular chicken breast with some veggies and stop right there. But we don't. We get the chicken fried steak instead, or we get the big hamburger with all the fixins, or whatever we get is, not the healthiest options. So I commend TA, Travel Center of America, and the Cleveland Clinic for trying to do something to help truck drivers. They say they're even going to work to educate drivers on healthy food options and healthy lifestyle choices. We have seen how well that works in the past. This is why, drivers complain about lack of exercise and things like that. Well, I'm just stuck in this truck all day. That's why I'm overweight. Well, any truck stop I've ever seen that has weight equipment or exercise equipment, they're never being used. Never. And that's why you don't see many truck stops investing in this stuff. But anyway, maybe it's a bit pie in the sky, but I hope it works. And just keep your eyes peeled for something on the healthier side. Like say, grilled chicken breast. Nothing wrong with that, right? Can't eat it every day because that would be really boring. But there's nothing wrong with ordering that every once in a while. Even fast food restaurants have some form of healthier version. Usually, it's just that we don't do it. So not much more to say about that, but if you want to check it out, it's over on cdllife.com. All right, this one's going to be a quickie, found it on overdriveonline.com. How to make sure your vote gets counted as deadlines approach. As we all know, or we should know, the midterm elections are coming up in November, and this is a big one, of course. Well, all elections are big, we should say, but this one is, next to the presidential election, this is the next biggest one. It will determine how the Senate and the Congress come out, whether it is a Democratic or Republican run country at the time. So it is very, very important. And basically all this article is it tells you which states allow early voting and which ones have no excuse absentee voting, all that kind of stuff. It's a very simple, quick little article, and you will want to check this out for your state to make sure you do not miss this. Most of the primaries are over at this point, but again, November is when the big thing comes around. So you want to be sure and be ready for that. Do not miss this. Make sure you vote. So anyway, if you're an American, you should be voting. If you're not an American, you should not be voting. Let's just leave it with that and just head on over here and make sure, because a lot of times, as we know, truckers are not in town on the day of the election. So most of us are using some sort of absentee ballot, and you want to make sure you know all the rules for your state. And this article can help you here at overdriveonline.com. Told you it'd be quick. Well, that's going to do it for the news, but thankfully we don't have to end the show right here like we did in the last episode. That's because we actually got some listener feedback. I appreciate it. But hey, I can't read that email until I get it delivered, right?
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Okay, first up, we're going to hear from Jared, who goes by the name Trailrider. He writes, Todd, in regards to the comments you made about doing away with all DOT hours of service rules. Yes, we talked about that with Mr. Ronnie Brown, who is filing exemption with the FMCSA to basically say that he doesn't need to follow the rules. That's basically what the exemption is asking for. Anyway, Trailrider goes on and says, I believe this would be fine for the owner-operator who has a clean driving record and controls his own work schedule. But when it comes to company drivers, you can bet that companies and dispatchers would take advantage of the situation and force drivers to work too many hours. The company I work for is constantly asking drivers how many hours they have left on a daily basis and asking them to make just one more pickup. Yeah, we've all heard that one, haven't we, Trailrider? Hey, can you just squeeze in this one more today? Well, I'm a little low on hours. You think you can make it work? Yeah, what's that mean? Cheat on your logs. Yeah, well, that is certainly something that the ELDs have stopped. You just can't cheat these logs. Well, you can, but you really got to try. And the DOT officers are smarter than you give them credit for. They know what they're looking for when they get down deep in those things way more than you do. Trust me, I've talked to one of them and he showed me all of the things he can do in an e-log, and it's way more than I understood. So don't tempt these officers, okay? So anyway, yes, Jared, Trailrider, I agree with you that for the most part, I think most drivers would be okay with not running logs. They would be just fine, no paper logs, nothing. You don't have to obey any rules. Just when you're tired, you pull over, get some sleep. The problem is you always have to go to the least common denominator. Wow, didn't think I'd ever use that term again since, high school math. Least common denominator. Well, that is kind of what we're dealing with here, because there's always going to be some truckers out there that push it. And to even just say that owner-operators that have clean driving records and control their own work schedule, as you said, yeah, that's ideal. But how about the owner-operator who does push it too hard? We all know they exist, right? I mean, I've talked to plenty of longtime drivers who pushed it all the time, way more than they should have done. And we can't think that that's still not going to happen today. And again, like I said in the last episode, that how do you know where to make that cutoff line? I mean, can you just say owner operators? You don't have to run e-logs. I'm sure OIDA would love that. But then say company drivers, you have to, because if not, your carriers are going to push you too hard. I don't know. There's just too many things in here that could go, I don't know. it's just, I never see it happen. We're never getting rid of e-logs. I think we all just should accept the fact. But either way, Trailrider, I appreciate you writing in and telling me your opinion on this. If anyone else out there has an opinion on this, and I know you do, you just don't have the gonads to write in like Trailrider here, make sure you send me an email to truckerdump@gmail.com and explain what your thoughts on these DOT rules are and if you should have to abide by them or not. And why? That's perhaps most importantly, why? Because if you remember right, when we were talking about Ronnie Brown's exemption request, the lawyer that in that last article was saying that that probably wasn't going to go anywhere is because Ronnie Brown did not say why he thought he was going to be safer by doing it. You have to, with those exemptions, you have to prove that you are going to be able to be just as safe as you would without following the rules. And he failed to do that. So, like I said, don't ever expect anything to come of this. But anyway, thanks for the topic. I appreciate something to be able to talk about here in the listener feedback section, Jared. So thank you, Trailrider. That's awesome. And next up, we're going to hear from Shy Guy, who apparently is not that shy because he is one of few people who ever write into a podcast to share their thoughts. So thank you, Shy Guy, for not being so shy. He writes, "Hi, Todd. Just wanted to thank you for taking the time to do these podcasts. I started driving over the road back in 2008. Then in 2010, I started dispatching." Ew. Just kidding. He says, "Now I am an owner-operator over the road since 2020. I have always just listened to music. I started listening to your podcast just this year. It's very informative and makes the miles shorter. Keep up the good work." Well, thank you, Shy Guy. I appreciate that. I'm glad it can waste some of your time on the road, and maybe you can learn a bit more about the trucking industry as you go along. Just keep you up to date on things that are happening without you having to search all the trucking websites yourself. You know, I was at that state a while back, 2 years ago, when I was just listening to music or I was listening to the XM radio, and I was, of course, paying for XM radio, and I would listen to talk stuff on there. I would listen to golf, believe it or not, golf broadcasts on the XM radio. Yes, that's kind of the way I roll. It's hard enough people think, how can you even watch golf on TV, let alone listen to it on the radio? But I did, Thursday through Sunday, the whole tournament. Yes, I'm weird. But anyway, I just got tired of paying for XM radio, and I got introduced to podcasts because I was interested in Apple products and was thinking about buying a Macintosh, and I didn't know anything about it, and I found a podcast on it, and I started listening to them and thought, this podcast thing's pretty darn cool. And that's just to say that just now that you've gone away from just music, don't just limit yourself to hopefully you haven't just limited yourself to just the Trucker Dump podcast. There's other good trucking podcasts out there, and expand your horizons. There's a podcast on everything. Some of my favorites is Stuff You Should Know. That is a great podcast. It's general knowledge. They just teach you about, they pick a random topic and they just tell you about it. I love that show. Still listen to it. I went away from it for a while, but I've gotten back into it recently and really wished I hadn't gone away from it. Sometimes it just fills your brain with useless knowledge, but that's fun too, right? Another one I enjoy is NPR's Planet Money. It's about a 20-minute podcast or so, just telling you something about money going on in the world today. Maybe they're talking about investments or the stock market or economics in general. Or, they recently, there's one I'm interested in tracking down that they're talking about this used car market and how these cars will just show up in these and how a car will make it from, say, your dealer after you trade it into, Bangladesh or something like that. I can't remember what they call that episode, but I'm really looking forward to listen to it. So very interesting stuff out there. Oh, there's another one I mentioned. If you want to keep up with the general news, I love this podcast called The Newsworthy, and it is just simply a 10, 15-minute roundup of the day's news, and it's very non-biased. They had a special episode on a Saturday recently about guns, and she said this is not going to be political. This is just going to be facts, and it was a very good, eye-opening podcast if you're open to having new ideas about guns and that guns don't kill people. People kill people. So go check that one out. Again, that was The Newsworthy. The other one was Stuff You Should Know, and NPR was Planet Money. And there are a million other good ones. So don't limit yourself to just trucking stuff. We got a lot of time to kill on the road out there. And if you are only listening to trucking podcasts or just a few podcasts, go searching on there. Often if you have a good podcast app, it will give you recommendations of popular shows. And if it's popular, likely it's for a reason. It's probably pretty good. So go check it out. And I probably shouldn't have to say this because you probably already know, but if you're listening to podcasts, most of them are free. There are just a very few of them, like I think the Joe Rogan podcast. Now you actually have to go to Spotify. It's still free, I think. I think you can get it for free on Spotify, but you have to listen to it on Spotify now. But in general, if you have any podcast app, you can download any podcast for free. Generally. All right. So thank you, Shy Guy, for writing in and giving me a chance to talk about podcasts. You know, I love my podcast. Heck, I turned my blog into a podcast back in 2012. Man, can't believe I've been doing this for 10 years. You'd think my numbers would be higher than episode 172, wouldn't you? Let's not go into that. So anyway, thank you again to Shy Guy and Trailrider for writing in. I love it when anyone takes the time to write into the show, share their thoughts, give me comments, suggestions, feedback on whatever. I love it. Send it to truckerdump@gmail.com. So with that, I'd just like to thank Porter Freight Funding for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. If you have the need to get paid immediately for some slacker customer, head on over to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or call 205-397-0934 and tell them the Trucker Dump sent you. And with that, let's get your motor running. Head on a highway. Okay, start the song. So, what to talk about to fill this week's 51-second hole? Because heaven forbid I remain silent for even 51 whole seconds. The horror of it all. Let's say we just see how quick I can plug everything I do. That'll be fun. There's the ebook combo pack for only $14.98. There's free stuff like informational PDFs and downloads of the full intro and outro songs. And don't forget the shiny donate button and the Trucker Dump Slack and Facebook groups. There's even Trucker Dump t-shirts if you want to be one of about, 4 people in the universe who own one. You can find all that at abouttruckdriving.com. As always, I appreciate you for listening every single week. So until next time, drive safe, stay out of my way. Check one, check. What was that? Hey, what say this week we just... what say this week we just figure... What say we... The rail handles about 30% of all freight that hits the road eventually in a truck. 70% of trucks, or 70%. Let's start over because that really sucked.